Good morning, everyone, to the first day of May in Arts 12. Guys, I know that Zach is going to introduce himself, but I would like to briefly introduce Zach Hug. He is a freelance writer, a man of many talents. He was a digital content director at ABCFamily, and he's here to talk to you about content, which is an interesting way to frame a topic. I mean, we've been talking a lot about media, and in fact, we have a class in the digital arts minor called Content and Media, because they're the two flip sides of the problem. You have the choice of how to deliver content, but then you really need to also choose what content to deliver. And so Zach would like to address that with you today. So please, a round of applause for Zach Hug.
I'm going to take your picture. If you don't want your picture taken, just put your hand over your face, but I wanted a picture of all of you. There you go. Now just put your arms straight up in the air. Just straight up, everybody. Because that's way more interesting. Perfect. Okay, look there. And we are all on Twitter. Great. Okay, so there's that. I have two questions to start with. How many of you have been watching TV, you're on a website, you're in a magazine, you're looking at something, and you see the phrase, go to blah, blah, blah for exclusive content? Show of hands. Okay, those of you that raise your hands, how many of you actually went for the exclusive content? Isn't that remarkable? What was yours? What did you go to get?
I think it was like kind of behind the scenes stuff for Face Off.
For Face Off? Yeah. Was it a video?
Yeah.
Great. Did you feel like it was worth it and was it exclusive?
Yeah.
Could you have found it somewhere else?
I mean, maybe if I like search YouTube really hard.
Right. Exactly. So, anybody else? What did you go find? Someone else? Yeah?
It was like gossip,
Celebrity gossip. Excellent. Do you remember what it was?
No.
Sure. Well, that's celebrity gossip. Okay. So, exclusive content. Yeah? It's kind of this word that we see now. Content. Great. Does anyone know? Can someone define it? That's the second question. Anybody have a definition of content? Kinda, yeah.
It's like sort of items and information.
Yeah, it's stuff, basically. Content is stuff. So these are two definitions that are pretty old. The first time content is really talked about as we think of it as digital content is in 1986, and you can tell because it says over the wires, meaning of communication. The next definition came in 1998. By this book, Information Architecture for the World Wide Web. And it's also pretty dated because it says things like e-services. I don't know what those are. But here it is, stuff. And this kind of is still pretty much a working decision, or a working definition. It's been updated over time. Last year, PC Magazine said products. They added the word products to content. Stuff that is a product. And that's pretty much what the digital industry has done to content. The bottom one is from this think tank that works on world economies, and they looked at digital content as something that we're all going to be contending with pretty much for the rest of history. All the information that we get are going to come through devices. Tiny little devices, they're all going to come on screens. I know a lot of people who work in content, because that's what I've done for years and years, and I called them and they wouldn't let me tell you who they were because they're executives at various media companies. And they said some pretty funny stuff. And the one that I loved the best was, you can replace it with another word. It's a video, it's text, it's photo. But if someone has to explain to you what it does, or if someone has to, what it does because you don't know what it is, then it's probably something else. There's a delivery method, and then there's the content. And the content is pretty much everything. It's everything, words, pictures, moving shapes, design, colors, all that stuff. It is Justin Bieber, blogs, your status updates, articles, everything on Hulu, the Irma Gerd girl, all of it. Anything that comes at you on the internet is content, technically. This is mine. This is all my content. This is everything you need to know about me, and it's like 3 things I screenshotted from like various platforms that I'm on. That's my resume, but it's Facebook. I went to NYU to be a playwright, and then I worked at some TV networks in digital content, and now I freelance. I wrote an episode of TV. That's all the things you can know about me. That's my content. That's it. You can follow me. You can see a picture of yourself at that handle pretty much anywhere. Just happened. That's LinkedIn. That's a 10-year-old picture of me, but I was sort of drunk, and it was LinkedIn, so I kind of think that's funny, so I keep it. That button that says complete your profile, that's content. There was a meeting one day at LinkedIn where like 10 people stood around a table and go, well, should it be blue? It should be blue. Should it be, well, what's the shading on the thing? And people got like mad about which blue it would be. That's content for someone. I use it to screw with my profile. Here's my website. I wear a lot of blue. I made these pictures. This is a video of the TV show that I wrote on for a season, and I love that, so I leave it there, even though it's kind of aging. The video is content. When you play that video, that's the content. The player is not. Delivery method. So let's talk about what's not content. The thing in your phone, the delivery system, that says, here's your contact information, it's going to all of your apps, so you don't have to do it anymore. Not content. Your status update going to all of your platforms, that is not content. The status update is. The thing that you typed is content. That database in the desert that's got all your information because you told BuzzFeed everything you like so they could sell you things, that is not content. Legally it is, but not for our purposes here. What we're talking about is things you see, things you interact with, anything that comes to you from a screen or a speaker. Okay, this opportunities for greatness somehow live when artists and brands converge. That's true if you're a brand. If you're an artist, not as much. Art and commerce are always going to play, and the internet is no different. Don't make any mistake. When you talk about anything that's online, it is driven by money, and it always will be. That's the internet. That's the world. So I kind of hate this graphic because I feel like this was my job for 8 years, was to convince people that what you were seeing was art, but we were always selling you something. And that's kind of what I'm going to go through next, is kind of how content became a thing. Are we clear on sort of what it is? Does everyone have a pretty good grasp? I mean, it's kind of a dead horse that I've kicked as hard as I can. Yeah? Okay. Okay, so there was Netscape, and there was AOL, and there was CompuServe, and there was Prodigy, and there was a World Wide Web. And that all happened in like the late 90s. I went through college without the internet. I'm older than I look. When I graduated, we kind of had the World Wide Web, but it was this thing that you went to someone's dorm room because they could get you cheaper tickets on the internet. That was sort of how imagine that, and I graduated in '98. So then brands came on board. You know how when you're watching something and you see like some new platform, like Kik is one that I'm seeing now, where people are using like their Kik handle at the bottom of things so that you can follow them and Kik or talk to them or do these things. That was what web addresses were for us. www.something.com was something we went, what is that? Should I know what that is? So then brands decided they had to do it. Brands being TV networks, food services, all that stuff. They decided they had to be on the internet. And then somewhere in like the mid-2000s, the 24 news cycle had been happening. CNN was always on. But TMZ, Perez Hilton, things where websites would update constantly, where you would have to come back to get the latest information, that happened in the mid-2000s. And then what happened was brands decided that they could be in conversation with their consumers. They suddenly learned that people would come to their websites and talk to them, tell them what they liked. They didn't know what to do with it yet, but they knew that they could. And that was sort of important. I love this woman so much. This picture, she went in for that job one day, and now this is a picture of her smelling money for the rest of her life. So what brands learned at one point was that they could sponsor digital content. And there was a great gold rush of this called the first tech bubble. The ad systems were built. So essentially, you'd get a page view, and then an ad would pop up, and those were crazy expensive in the mid-2000s. You could make a ton of money by just refreshing the page because there were static ads. And then people built like these video players where you could make a video about a Project Runway contestant, and it was fantastic because you could put a commercial in front of the video. And that cost a ton of money. So all these brands are now suddenly making money on just stuff they're creating. And they figured out that they could make money by listening to their customers. That they could come to the website and say, I love this. And every time they entered a comment, the page would refresh and another ad would pop. And they made money. And then the audience wised up. And they knew that brands were in charge of the conversation. A story about 2006, 2007, I worked at Bravo. And one of my jobs every day was to come in and read the blogs of, I would edit them and post them, but like the judges for Project Runway, the judges for Top Chef, they would write, well, here's my take on the episode. And people would comment. And there would be something like 1,000 comments to come through and wade through every morning. And we had to wade through them because they were pretty offensive and said terrible, unbelievable, anonymous things. But what we also did was we would edit them if we needed to. We would cut out the terrible, awful thing and leave the rest of it there so people could still see themselves represented. You don't do that anymore. We did it because we had to. Now there's entire companies who just reject the comment altogether. And people caught on. They knew we were doing it, and they were mad about it. So they built other places to do it. And that's how the internet got a little bit mean. The proliferation of snark. It was also happening culturally, but snark, we've heard the term. We know what it is. Yeah. It's a little bit bitchy. Fine. But funny, that's important. But they went places like Television Without Pity, which was this amazing website where you could go and they would post recaps of episodes, and you could talk about how terrible or great it was, but you could be fun. You couldn't tell if you liked it or not. NBC realized at one point that Television Without Pity was taking their customers, that they were making more money because they were popping ads. Not well. So they bought them. They imported these 3 people from Canada who ran this website, bought them, made them part of Bravo, and within a year, those people had quit and the traffic fell off because they changed it entirely because they started editing it. It folded 2 months ago. Also piracy. On these message boards where people are talking about these shows, and brands are freaking out because they're starting to post their shows online about this point. And people are saying, here's where you can find it for free. People went crazy about this. So, social media came along. And we still didn't really know what to do about it, but now, here's what we knew. We built websites every day. We had stuff that we spent all this time making and no one came to see it anymore unless it came to them. You didn't have to come to a website anymore. If it was important and you had already selected that you liked it, it came to you. And this was huge for us because what we knew was that we didn't have to control the conversation anymore. People had their face associated with what they were saying, so they'd be nicer. They wouldn't say crazy, terrible things. I mean, I can't tell you the anonymous things people will say and threaten other people with. There was a Real Housewives contestant or a person whose son was not portrayed on the show. He didn't exist as far as the show was concerned, who posted his mother's social security number and her address and her phone number to our message boards. I mean, it's shocking amounts of stuff where now there's supposed to supposedly be in a social world accountability because you can't do it without a profile. Here's where the money split off, though. So up until this point, all digital websites, everything that happened for TV, for brands, was all part of marketing departments. But now there was Facebook and there was Twitter, and marketing said, we get that. That's ours. And all the digital departments at most companies went, great, because we don't want to. We don't want to have to do this thing anymore that we feel is beneath us. We want to create content. Still don't entirely know what we mean by that, but we do know that we watch TV, and there is something that's going to drive us to the internet to look for more. Let's make that stuff. And that's pretty much what a lot of us did for years and years and years. And then it got really confusing because the people who sell ad space are on Facebook all day because their jobs are a little boring. And their mom is on Facebook, but their ads are not because Facebook didn't have a way to sell advertising. They do now. And it was pretty quick to do it. And watch Twitter just try as fast as they can. Brands caught up really fast to this. And digital departments have been entirely erased by this. Because there's no need for us to make anything. No one's going to the websites. Because everything that's made for a brand, everything that's made for your favorite TV show, is now happening on Facebook and it's happening on Twitter. But you're all smarter. You're the first generation that grew up with these devices. The first generation that actually understands what the internet was from the time you were able to process information. You had a thing that did something. That's pretty important because we had to learn it, and a lot of people didn't. They're old, and they didn't. But piracy is completely one. You know how to get anything, for free. And you don't have to go through a brand to do it. You don't have to identify yourself to do it. You sort of do, but... So social is also no longer just Facebook. There are people who think Facebook is the entire internet. 10 years ago, that was Google. Everybody started at Google and just would type stuff in, and like even web addresses would go through Google. It was the weirdest thing. And now, it's everything. Your phones are the first point of contact for most people. But this time the industry knows that. And they've built everything mobile first. They know that you are out and about, that you have this thing, that it comes to you, it has to be a good size. They also, pinching, that thing that you can do on your phones, that's because babies can do it. They want children to know how to do it. They made very careful studies of this because they weren't going to get screwed again. That's what net neutrality is. It's always been driven by money. And it will be. And I know that everyone's been seeing that net neutrality is like a thing, and it's kind of a weird thing. If you look into it, it's pretty scary. And also, there's two sides of it. It'll be political. It's a big deal, but everything behind the internet is driven by money. So of course they're going to say, how do we stop piracy? How do we put things behind walls? How do we make things faster or slower based on who pays for it? That's just how they're going to do it. And they know how your brain works because they are watching you click stuff. And what you're looking to do online, they know everything you do and some of what you think because you tell them. And here's the thing. I'm not saying that's a terrible thing. I'm not saying you should, oh God, for heaven's sakes, hide behind a wall. You kind of can't. But in terms of what the content is that you make, and be clear, you're all making content every day, there are other ways to go about it. So there's this thing called the content cycle, and I used Pretty Little Liars because I worked on it when I was at ABCFamily. I worked for the digital team that our job was to get more people to watch it, and there were plenty of people already watching it. But here's sort of how we watch the content cycles go by. So it's this show with this huge fan base, and is anybody still watching? Anyone? It's like season 5, I think? Great, sure. They've identified who the bad guy is. Her or his name is A, but it changes constantly, and it's this kind of confusing storyline. But the information is tightly controlled because, spoilers, etc. So there's all this thing, this buzz that builds up to the episode for an entire season. Like, it's going to come back, it's going to come back. We have to make a sneak peek video, we have to tweet about it, we have to make a hashtag that will trend, we have to do all this stuff. And it's a constant, crazy push to make things for the internet. That while the show is not on the air, we're gonna finally come see it. So we make videos, we make photos, we release a sneak peek from the set of just someone's eyeball, and people are actually speculating on what is in the reflection of the eyeball, and it's a doorknob. But could the doorknob be a secret and a clue? They're masters at this because it's fun and weird, and people are for some reason they keep doing it. So the show finally airs. And then the cycle just starts completely over because now you want to know what's going to happen next week. And now you also want to know what your friends are saying about it, that one friend of yours who always watches the show too. There's that chatter, there's that discussion, there's the live show. They do a show online where they watch what happens on Twitter and Facebook, and the people who work in the marketing department, the schlubby schmoes who are experts in social media, sit there with people who sometimes are on the show, and they talk about what happened that night and what could be coming. Then there's this weird windowing strategy. So you know how you can find it on Hulu sometimes, and sometimes you can't, and then sometimes it's on Netflix? That is all the cable companies paying for it at different periods of time. And the Disney company, who owns ABCFamily, who owns the show, actually Warner owns it, there are a billion different people who make millions and millions of dollars on the show is available here from this date to this date. And from that point, we're going to pay this amount of money to these people. And from this point after here, it's going to go here, and the money's going to come back to us for this. It's an insane amount. The reason you can't find it is because they don't want you to be able to find it, except for the one place they're making money for you to find it. So you steal it. And then there's ancillary content. So we made Pretty Dirty Secrets, which was an 8-webisode series so that the show never goes off the air. That's the sort of interesting part. The show went off the air after Halloween, and we had 8 weeks until it came back for season 3. So we made 8 webisodes that aired that were posted to the internet at the same time the show aired, every Tuesday for 8 weeks. So what's changed is that the show never goes off the air. The episode ended, but there's an entire week's worth of content, of things about next week, and handsome boys. That's a big deal on the internet. It does very well. So who wins in this? Well, the network. They made a bunch of money. The show gets picked up for another season because more people watched it. Sponsor, because they went to town. And you watched the characters eat chips, and now you want chips. The fans win. If you want more about that show, if you want to explore more of the world, we did whole bios on characters that appeared in one episode. You could learn more about them that the writers told us about. In the webisode series that we did, we introduced a character named Shayna, who appears in at the end of season 3. But she was the first sneak peek, and people wild speculation about who she was. And it's fun. It's interesting. What's also one of the winners here is storytelling. We can expand you used to watch TV for an hour a week, and now you watch it just constantly. So here's another example. And this one's a little more seedy. So did everyone see this picture on Tuesday? It's the whole cast of Star Wars. Well, there they are. And they did it because people were tweeting that they saw Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher getting on planes to London. So they had to release it. They had to say, here's the cast. Maybe. Who ultimately knows? But, so, here's a content cycle that makes more money than just helping out the fans get more stuff about their shows. So it's a big fan base. Come on now. There we go. It's a big fan base, and people want to know, dear God, what will this Star Wars movie be? And the other part of this is Carrie Fisher's a little insane. So she's in a press conference one day, and she says, if asked, I am on board to play Princess Leia. But still, nobody's going to confirm or deny that she might be in talks to play Princess Leia in the next Star Wars movie. Except she said if she was asked, she'd be on board. So the story, Carrie Fisher on board to play Princess Leia. Oh my God! You guys! Carrie Fisher, she's going to be Princess Leia again. Now that is technically true. She did say on board. She did play Princess Leia once. It's good to speculate. But there's no regulation. So that's the story. Breaking Star Wars news, Princess Leia's cast. And this is everything you need to make money. This is everything, because the title is perfect. Breaking Star Wars news, Princess Leia is cast. Well, someone wrote the article early enough, and there's no regulation. I could have written it and just put it on my blog. But search engines would find it because people are searching for Star Wars. They also know Carrie Fisher was at a press conference, so they're searching for Star Wars cast. And that has the word Star Wars right at the beginning of the title, and that's how search engines find it. And the word cast is over there. And Princess Leia's in there. People are searching for those terms. And because they wrote the headline to be that, it will appear at the top of Google. And it doesn't say who was cast as Princess Leia. Is it Sharon Stone? No. And then we all start sharing it on Facebook. And that even further games the SEO system, because that's the article that everyone's going to. It's getting more traffic. People are sharing it with each other. Oh my God, it's great. And then also ads are running on every website that's now picked up the story because they're able to tie their ads to the word Star Wars across multiple ad systems. There's a program called Ghostery. Do you know this? Ghostery basically just tells you who's tracking you. And you can install it on any of your browsers, and you can turn all of the ads off on the internet. And it's fantastic. It only works if you sign up for it, but you will be amazed at how many different ad systems are tracking your information because it gives you a list every time you go somewhere. Anywhere from 6 to 20 at any given time. And they're just ad systems, and they just want to know what you're doing so they can give you better ads. And they all make money every time they show up. It's small amounts now, but it does add up over time. And then you guys, BuzzFeed gets to say, well, if it's Carrie Fisher, who's going to play her daughter? In the article somewhere, they can say, we don't know if she has a daughter or not, but it doesn't matter. That's the headline. And the story is confirmed. She's playing Princess Leia. So the studio has to deny the story. because that information can't be out there. The studio can't have anyone thinking, there's so much money at stake for Carrie Fisher's career, there's so much money at stake for all the people who are surrounded by this movie, to have that rumor be true, that they have to deny it. And oh my God, great. Good for them, because now we get an entirely new cycle. The story hasn't changed. Nobody's going to confirm or deny that Carrie Fisher is going to be Princess Leia in the next Star Wars movie. But the studio said so. So, no official word on casting despite the comments. That's the article. And then there's me, dumb blogger me, who says Carrie Fisher was fired from Star Wars? But better yet, you guys, Princess Leia has a daughter. No, she doesn't. None of this is real. But everyone made money today, and tomorrow, that's our story. And that's what we get to do over and over and over again. And so every piece of content, going forward now, this is what people are trying to do. With their own content, with your content, with anything. That's it. That's the cycle. So who profits? And it's no longer winning, I think, at this point. BuzzFeed, they made money. Carrie Fisher, no one's talked about her for 15 years. Walt Disney, because that movie comes out in 2016, and it's April 2014, and here we are, bananas about the casting. Whoever said it first? Someone at some news organization got to put up that story about Princess Leia. And, good job today, Jim. You got all of the page views we needed for today. Sponsors made a ton of money. Any site that ran the story made money. So here's the thing about content. I still don't know. It's this word. It's a word that the industry uses because they don't want to have to say video and text and photos. Go to the website because we have video and text and photos, and also we have this other crap that we made. They can't say crap, they say content. And it's starting to work its way into culture. And that's a little bit dangerous, but also very powerful. TaskRabbit, Donors Choose. Lyft. All of these services that we see are based on the fact that we don't have to give money to anybody. But Donors Choose is, we all know it, teachers put up, I need pencils, and you give $10 and they get pencils. But what you're choosing is the thing that speaks to you. If you are an artist and you see a school that needs $20 for paint, great. But the reason that you found them was because they have a picture and they have text that they wrote and they put up pictures of adorable children painting pictures. And that speaks to you. It's the content that does it. But it's the same delivery system that they use for TaskRabbit, which is, I need someone to mop my kitchen floor. And 5 people bid on that. And I choose the person who's going to mop my kitchen floor because they wrote content that said, I will do it for this price. Here's a picture of me. All that stuff. It's the same delivery system. It's the content that made the sale. Lyft. It's the same thing. You choose your driver based on their reviews, based on what they told you about themselves. TaskRabbit, they have you actually now make a video of yourself saying, here's why I should be able to come and mop your floor. It's the content. That's how you're making your choice. A system for partners to use, Donors Choose, is vetted by a ton of organizations, and it's a system by which giant organizations who have terrible PR problems can say, no, but look, charitable giving. Go here. Donors Choose, do it yourself. And you can do it. I sent journals to some kids in Missouri, and they wrote me thank you letters, and I've never felt better about it. It's fantastic, and they're little faces. That's what sold me. And I like to write stuff. And they said thank you. Great. Arab Spring. Twitter didn't cause it. It was going to happen. What Twitter did do was made us all aware of it in a way that we weren't aware of it before, because we actually got the journalism. The Department of Defense asked Stanford University to look into this because the story was, Twitter caused the Arab Spring. It didn't. What it did do is it made me go, from the person who wrote it, first-hand account, instantly. They didn't build Twitter to foment protest. They built Twitter so you could think dumb stuff and share it with people. But they used it. The content they made was what did this for us. And when they told me they're going to shut down Twitter there, I went ballistic. And I didn't know who to call, but I wanted to. This is the same think tank. So what they do is they look at world economies. And their whole thing is that digital content is about to become pretty much the thing at the center of everything. All the information we get will be digital. So it's highly valuable. Basic creative infrastructure. It's the things that come at you on your little screens and through the speakers. And it's everything. It's sort of boggling. Here's the thing, it's a word now. We're seeing it in all sorts of stuff. This is my favorite. Facebook and TED team up to bring exclusive content. What do you think it is? Could it be a TED Talk? Amazon to stream original HBO content. You know what HBO makes? Movies, TV shows. It was too hard to write movies and TV shows, so they put content there. But also they're hedging their bets that HBO might start making, infographics or something. I don't know. Can all Time Warner Cable customers view 3D content? I don't know what that means. Here's the other thing, though. There is a definition for just the word content outside of a digital perspective. And this is the OED. And I love it because it's kind of a poem. The things that are held or included in something. And what I love is that it's even still pretty vague. Something. It's the things inside a container. Here's where it gets dangerous. There we go. The animations. That's a book. And that's a TV show. That's a dance. Baseball game. Maricasot. Operation. Movies. That's all content now. It's content. I'm not here to say that you should always buy books in paper, because actually I feel like I would rather have trees than paper. Read it on the Kindle. That's fine with me. But that's still a book. But now it's also just content. So when books and paintings become the same thing, when what we're monetizing, what we're making money off of is this amorphous idea called content, where do these things live anymore? How do we start to process the information? How do we, as people who create this kind of stuff, think of it on its own and as its own thing? Down to baseball games. If it all comes at us through here, in the same delivery system, how do we keep defining content? I have no answers. I really don't. So I might someday, and I hope that you do. So email me if you do. I will answer any email. If you buy me coffee, I will sit down with you. I don't have any answers about what the content is. This is just you create it every day. You create content every day. Be sure what you're creating is important. And that's pretty much what I got. So I'm opening it up for discussion at this point, because I'm curious what you think about the content that you make.
But first, a round of applause. This is great. We have so much time for questions. This is a good thing.
Good.
Because normally we were like, oh, get 3 questions in. Artists love to talk at length about themselves. Zach is talking about other people's stuff, so he wants to hear from you, which is good. Questions from our questioners?
Yeah.
Do you think that the brands and the sponsors and the companies would respond to fan arts too?
Yes, they do. They absolutely do, but they can't in some ways too. So fan art technically uses someone else's property. Someone drew the character. Someone created the character. I have a good story about this, actually, but what it comes down to is that that's someone's intellectual property, and it's protected by copyright, and it's how they make money. Fan art is technically a new form of intellectual property, but the line is very dicey about who owns what, who owns the image. If I draw the character and you use it in your fan art, is it mine, is it yours? And there's a lot of that being drawn right now. There was a period of time where I worked at ABC Daytime, so General Hospital, and I would get letters from fans about how they wanted this couple to get back together, and they sent me affidavits from the law office of Diane Miller. Diane Miller is not a real person. She is a character played by an actress named Carolyn Hennessy. So we had Carolyn Hennessy come in and pretend to be Diane and say, I didn't write these. And legal went ballistic, because what we said was, you guys all wrote us and said you want this couple back together. If we had ever gotten that couple back together, the story idea would have originated with the person who made the affidavit, and we would have had to pay them for the story. So we changed all of General Hospital's storylines for a year because they were afraid that we would get sued for that. And the one thing no one wants to do is get sued. So they do respond to fan art. They do know that fans are doing it, but they can't tell you that they are. Because then you own it, right? Anyone else?
Daniel, go ahead.
They were talking about the whole content cycle and releasing information. Do you guys ever do where like I've seen a lot like the leaks of information. Is there often where like the leaks are deliberate, or they
Yeah.
do?
Well, you can tell when it's, you can sort of tell when it's deliberate. I mean, I think the thing is that the audience is always smarter than we think they are. You can tell when a leak is an actual leak when you can't find it after a day. Once it's gone and it's away from official sites, it was a mistake. But if it sort of lives and like, then 2 days later it turns up on the official site.
Like,
Yeah.
because I know it's like sometimes like the leaks themselves would disappear off quickly, but then like the leaks would just keep coming in.
Yeah.
Like after a while, it's just like that steady stream has to be from.
Well, keep in mind though, YouTube, you can make money as a YouTube user by putting up a video people want to see. So so actually getting something that's valuable and leaking it can actually make you kind of a lot of money. So leaks happen. I mean, it's pretty easy to do. The network doing it on purpose, it's a strategy, but the problem with the strategy is that there are this gawker who's going to say, nice leak, you guys. And that's kind of bad for the brand in a lot of ways, that like, hey, they tried to leak something poorly. And that's no one's ever going to trust it again. So it's a toss-up. We tried it, we weren't very good at it. Someone over there, yeah.
So I know that you run a couple of blogs, and you also worked for ABCFamily at some point, and you talked about how like the Arab Spring was really kind of got tumbled into all kinds of widespread distribution because of people being content creators. So would you say it's like a trickle up approach or a trickle down approach to content making? If that makes sense.
I think it's a question of, and it's one of those industry buzzwords, it's a question of scale. It's a question of how many people care about a certain thing. That's what's going to make it go wider. So I think if you're I think in terms of Arab Spring, I would say that someone tweeting a picture of what's actually happening in front of them is so instant and does go so fast that I would say it's from the bottom up. From a corporate perspective of, watch this dumb thing we made, they have ways of flooding Facebook with it. Do you know what I mean? And feeling very, you have to see it, go, for heaven's sakes, use all the likes, associate different terms with it. So the content comes down from on high in a lot of ways, sanctioned. You know, does that answer the question? Or no?
Yeah. Would you say one is trending more than another?
No.
No.
It's, well, one is bought, one is paid for. A network will pay a ton of money to be everywhere. Something that happens organically on its own, that's what they want. You will hear in any marketing room, let's make a viral video. And you just want to shoot yourself. I mean, like, it's the worst, most terrible thing, because you can't. No one knows what it's going to be. It just happens to be what happens that day. To me, I sort of value something someone has made and put out there on their own. I think of myself when I make a status update on Facebook. I just think, oh, this is going to live here forever. It sort of hurts my feelings to think that I've written something stupid. I will go back to like years past and delete stuff because I feel like it doesn't represent me anymore. But it's there. I mean, and I said it and I meant it. And it's something I did becomes large, and it's just because I did it, not because I want attention or I want money or any of those things, then that means something more to me as a creator, whether or not it means anything to anybody else. So, you know, my mom loved my eulogy about my cat. No one else did. Do you know what I mean? I've seen eulogies on cats on Huffington Post and thought, well, that's sweet. It's toss-up.
Who's Jesse's favorite philosopher? Heidegger, right? You're all like, oh no, Heidegger again. But what I loved about Zach is here to talk to us about business fundamentally, and this is about money. And yet there's I do want to point it out to you. There's a kind of Heidegger moment here. So Heidegger, those of you who weren't in Arts 11, the briefest summary I'll give you is he's talking about the atomic bomb, and he notes the following. He makes the following two observations. One is that technology is pervasive, and worse than that, it's invasive. It can't be escaped. This is the first argument. And so Zach says, you guys are the first generation who grew up with this stuff, and you pinch from birth, right? I mean, you can't escape it. There's no eliminating that capability and that expectation from your mind. So that's the first part of the argument. And then the second part of the argument is like, okay, so given that we live in this world full of this stuff, this collapse of all forms of culture into content, is there another way? That's his question at the end. He's like, is there another way we can deal with this stuff? And that's so the second half of Zach's presentation is all about like what can we do and how can we rearrange this stuff and how can you guys, as the primary consumers of these products and as the people who are the most kind of empowered to change it for better or for worse, and what does that look like? So I find I wanted to observe that because I find it fascinating that all these things do come back to this. Here's a guy who the internet didn't exist. I mean, he's talking about physical destructive power, but a lot of the same terms apply to this problem of how the internet percolates through our entire universe. One of the things I think you guys should be asking Zach about, because you have this great opportunity, is here's a guy who's worked in all these different industries and done all these different things. So maybe, and the group that's meant to be asking questions, do you guys have questions about, like, how did you get let me ask the question, how did you get a job at ABCFamily? And would you want to still have a job?
No. Well, it pays very well. I'm not, believe me, I quit a year ago, and I quit. And by that I mean I was done doing this because it started to break my heart. That I didn't think what we were doing was good for people anymore. And
finding another way.
Yeah. So I started in 2006. I worked in a coffee shop. And this woman came in who was in every day, and I said, I gotta get out of here. And she said, she worked at Bravo, and she said, we're hiring freelance writers. And that was 2006 when content became really valuable, and it turned out I was good at it. I studied playwriting, and those guys make like $10,000 a year. So I had to do something else. So I became this, and I just happened to be sort of lucky, and I like to watch TV and then think what other crap do we want for this? That's how I started. And then I just progressively, I had a really good mentor who kept moving networks herself and just would hire me every time. So I was pretty lucky. And I'm affable. That helps. Don't be a jerk because no one will hire you. Or they will, but then they won't promote you.
What about ABCFamily kind of disheartening for you?
It wasn't ABCFamily as much as it was digital. ABCFamily actually, they're a network that makes TV for females 13 to 35. That alone, it's a fascinating demographic to learn a lot about and to sort of make content for because it's specific, and you do all this research about what do millennials like and all of this kind of nonsense about how you have to shape it. ABCFamily actually, they talk up to their audience, which I really like. They treat everyone like an adult. I liked working for them. What I didn't like doing anymore was pretending that what I was making was art and that it was. I think that there is a lot of value in entertaining people. I really do. I think we all work very hard. I think that we need something that we can sit down at the end of the day and enjoy that is quality entertainment. Ultimately, I wanted to be a writer of TV shows. I didn't want to get more people to watch the thing that someone else made. I wanted to make something. So I quit my job and did that. But again, it pays great. Just, it's a lot of hours. I had a BlackBerry that went off in the middle of the night because the site went down. We once leaked something so massive for about an hour. It was live on the site, and I had to fire 3 people for it. About a TV show. A TV show about murderous teenage girls. I got... That's it. That was why. But I think they're a good organization. I actually do. I think they care about people.
When you decided to quit, did you actually have a backup plan, or did you just feel like you did
It took me a year. Yeah, I saved a bunch of stuff, and also I live in Los Angeles. I've lived there for 6 years specifically to meet different kinds of people, and I knew I wanted to write TV most of my life, and it was just sort of part of the plan. And I was also very lucky that I knew someone who was hiring a writer on a TV show, and so I quit my job and had nothing to do. I had a pretty good cushion, but that.
So given what we know about how digital media wants to make money,
Mhm.
do you feel like art making is something that is as plausible as it was maybe before the internet? Do you feel like art making still has a place?
Absolutely. Oh,
Yeah.
even greater. I would say that your reach is stronger. You can get it to people who want it faster, and more people can see it. The danger is, does the Mary Cassatt painting get an ad in this world? If you make something that is completely digital, can you do it without getting an ad put on it? I don't know that you can. I think making money as an artist is difficult, no matter what. But that's kind of in our hands in a lot of ways. The audience dictates that. So the answer to that is that's kind of up to the rest of us.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt your questions, but I will briefly. I do want to interrupt your questions. A bunch of you have been quite skeptical of Greg Smith online. So Greg Smith is a guy who came in and said he's a digital content creator who's making a magazine, a print magazine. And most of you on the website have said that's just crazy, as he acknowledged that it was crazy.
Yeah.
Do you think it's crazy?
I do.
And his logic, maybe to share that with you, is he thinks that there is a resurgent audience for print media, a kind of tired group of people who want long form writing. I mean, we both. I think probably Zach and I both wish this was true, in a way.
No,
Well,
I like trees more than paper. I mean, again, I like long form writing, but I know where to find it online.
Right.
Because I guess I am skeptical of a
Yeah,
long
no,
form
it's-
magazine.
As you guys are, right? I mean, so Greg's magazine's going to arrive. It's his first issue, and it's been quite a labor. But it's interesting to hear you guys talk back to back because, of course, Greg's skill. I mean, this isn't a guy who doesn't know how to make digital content. The magazine is about digital content.
Right.
That's the central irony.
Yes.
And maybe in that particular narrow audience, because it's such a kind of net-based audience, maybe they want print media
Yeah.
for ironic reasons.
Well, I think someone pointed out recently. I'm going to forget who it was, but that media is controlled by people who work in media. That Twitter is successful, but only because the people who use it see success in it, and they're the only people talking about it online. The people who say that Twitter is successful are people who use it for marketing, and they saw a 10% lift year to year in this metric, whatever. So to them, it's a success, and they're the ones publishing results. For the rest of us, I don't know if it's working. Who cares? But the internet is it's made by people who care about this stuff. So, it's kind of hard to know. They will protect, the content cycle is something that, believe me, that's what net neutrality is about. It's about protecting the machine that makes the money. Because so much money has been at stake, made, lost, since the beginning of the internet. Yeah.
As a brand relationship, what's the relationship between the ABC family and Disney?
Well, Disney's pretty good at managing their audience. They have the Disney Channel, and then when those kids get to be about 13, they hand them off to ABCFamily, and then somewhere in there they go to ABC. Disney owns all those brands. And then also there's movies. And Once Upon a Time it's why they made Maleficent, because it worked. They have this entire library that's aging, but by the way, so is its audience, and they remember these movies, and they can do that. ABC Family, as an offshoot, they get a lot of flack. I mean, their biggest show is The Fosters. It's lesbian moms and a mixed race family. how is this on a network called Family? Well, their tagline is a new kind of family, and they're pretty proud of that, of saying, we're representing what's happening in American culture. We're not, we're not a family channel, because what does that word mean to you? It's different from what it means to you, to you, to you. We'll do all those things. And that it's owned by Disney.
Not to interrupt the three of you, but is there anybody who has asked a question? Another question? I'm a little bit concerned with the official question group is not asking questions. Oh, Kelly, are you in this group?
Yeah.
Okay, so study. Never mind. All right, Kelly, and then Dan.
Okay. I guess in that case, with that particular, is it a TV show, the one with like the lesbian couple and like the
Fosters.
Okay, so is that something that the clientele wants, or is something that is for the sake of representing that story and representing that kind of family?
Yes.
Both?
Well, that's the thing. It got popular fast. The clientele doesn't care. I mean, do you mean sponsors? So television, the internet, they are all designed to sell you things. TV shows exist because of the commercials that happen between the show story points. That's why we have TV. So The Fosters was a risk they took. They put it on the air. People went bananas for it. It's very well loved by the audience that the sales team sells ad space for. And so they said, well, we got this rating, and sponsors went, great. They don't care. The sponsors don't care. As long as it's got a huge amount of people watching it, they want their commercials there. What the audience wants, clearly, is that show, because they watch it more than they watch anything else. It beat Pretty Little Liars, which was they never thought they would do. So
I was wondering, do you think that digital media will just keep on growing, making money, or do you think there might be another burst happening soon, like with Twitter?
I would hope that the thing that I think I noticed when when it did burst the first time was that it was astonishing how many people worked at places who got fired who didn't do anything. It was an astonishing amount of. I reduced a staff from 19 writers to 3, and our output didn't really change. And I was amazed at that, and I couldn't believe that we were able to do that. It's an industry that when there's money, just inflates and spends it on solid gold houses, and then when it's gone, it comes back down. But every time it comes back, they try to be a little bit smarter about seeing what's next, and I think that's what happened this time. And I think that all the things that are in place to keep them from making money, they've been dismantling for several years. And so I think that it'll keep growing. Everything bursts at some point. Kind of. Again, just me talking.
Yeah, and this is something to be wary of in your sort of digitally inflected or digital media inflected lives. Be suspicious of some opportunity that seems plated with gold, because it won't be for long. I mean, every person in our demographic has a story like this. I remember the first job I had out of college. We went to a meeting to make our website in the late 90s, and the offices, go to the downtown office of the website maker and sit around a table with like 4 people who were and like the glass table with the brick wall in the loft conversion, and spend 4 hours talking about what ultimately was something that we now make in 5 minutes. I mean, this is like, in fact, what we make in 5 minutes is much better. They had a moment in time. I mean, this is new, and there was a small number of people who could control this and knew how to do this, knew how to work the HTML, and so that, they were making money, but not for long. And every opportunity will be like that. I mean, it always has been. Every technological opportunity has had a kind of limited lifespan and these sort of bust and boom cycles. So the internet's not new in this regard.
Well, but also social changed everything. I mean, someone every 5 years invents something that changes everything. Do you know what I mean? What social taught us was that, and avatars. I mean, if you think about it, your social media pages they're not you, they're a version of you. I am fascinating on Tumblr. Not as fascinating. I mean, I'm not that interesting. Do you know what I mean? I'm not nearly as good looking as any of my Facebook pictures, and that's on purpose. That's the stuff. That's the content that I make, the content that I give to the world. It's why I have a website that has my name in it, because I want to control how I'm perceived digitally. For no other reason, because I have to be. Because otherwise, because if you're not, and you Google yourself and stuff comes up that you're like, what is this? Well, that's someone Googling you for a job.
I might ask this question again on Tuesday with the iClicker thing. How many of you have a personal website in your name? I know of at least 10 of you that do. That's interesting. So, and you guys are college students, and you don't need a brand for yourself yet. But that is interesting that already something like 10% of you have a branded entity that is you.
Google yourself and imagine a prospective job Googling you.
And you all have social media pages, so those are branded versions of you, and it's just sort of one additional step to have that. I mean, in a way, like there's something professional about having a website. Now, a website's been relegated to this kind of, well, I'm now a professional person, so I'm going to make myself a little brand here, as opposed to only having a Facebook website. The other day, I applied to go to a conference, and they didn't have a dedicated website, and I felt old because I was so disappointed. This isn't legit. All they have is a Facebook page. This isn't a legitimate enterprise.
Yeah.
And that was my...
There are networks who don't have websites. Showtime has a website where you can watch... You can't watch any of the shows on... There's Showtime Go or HBO Go's version of it. But all their marketing, if you watch their ads on air, go to our Facebook page. ABCFamily, there was an entire department of people who made a website. It's gone. Because it's all Facebook. Everything happens in social media. And so they feel like, well, we don't need a website. You can watch the shows there, but that needs one person to run it, not all these people.
Which is why you guys should all abandon Facebook as you allegedly are. Because that'll change. That'll make a new thing. It'll be great.
Yeah. Well,
it'll rock the whole universe again.
It is making a new thing. And that's the thing. In 10 years, when the internet is all water, we'll all adapt to it. But content's not going anywhere. That's the point that I'm trying to make, is that the stuff that you write as your status update and the photos that you're uploading and the stuff that you're creating every day is going into this system, and someone's always figuring out a way to make money off of it, no matter what it is. I'm not saying, lock it down. I mean, legit, be careful, but be mindful, certainly, that what you're creating is part of a larger ecosystem, because it's ultimately your responsibility to make it.
Any other questions? Oh, in the back, yeah.
Do you think that since everything is monetized and made for money, that it will lead to, I guess,
Okay. The graphic that I showed you at the beginning that said artists and brands and the real magic lived in the middle, that's what they've sold you from the commerce perspective of it, that it is artistry. You don't have to make art for money. It's better if you can, for your own sort of, it feels very validating, but you don't, people are always going to make stuff, no matter what. The amount of quality that most people consume, because we had to make it along these lines to monetize it, people always kind of demand quality. People like stuff because it's good. And ultimately, that's kind of where the money follows. But the people who manage the money, they just go where the audience goes. So it does balance out over time. There's people who work in sales offices at television networks who don't care what shows we put on, and aren't necessarily totally in touch with culture. There was a guy 4 years ago. No, it was longer. It was 5 or 6 years ago, and I was in a meeting, and he's the head of the sales division, and he said out loud, full voice, "Well, people will stop using DVRs eventually." Not meaning there will be a new system, meaning it's a fad, which is bananas to me. But they don't care as long as someone pays money into their system.
And you think of it this way: if we all decided as a class, a very small, and there was 100,000 of our class, to stop clicking on those top 10 lists that come up on the internet, the 10 worst dressed Hollywood people from 1970s, then they would stop making them. They make them because we click on them, and therefore they make more of them. If we then instead went and clicked on YouTube videos of modern dance, then Yvonne Rainer from last quarter would actually be wealthy. It's a very simple connection. I mean, the content that we choose to consume. I mean, I'm saying this as a bit of a to try to encourage you to spend some of your time consuming content that is high art of some kind, or that is quality. I mean, you can define quality however you like, but it's kind of important to culture as a whole for you guys to take an interest in forms of culture that are substantial, and not all the time. We also all like to watch cat videos, and cat videos will always be there for us.
I was hoping Carrie Fisher would be cast as Princess Leia, and lo and behold, she has been. Like I followed that story. I thought that was great. But also, a lot of us have boring jobs. I'll spend time looking at celebrity news just because I'm a American. Kind of thing. It's fun.
Do when you're not online on the web?
I actually weirdly spend very little time online, as little time as I possibly can. Well, I do a lot of writing. I mean, I make stuff for sites, and so I spend a lot of, I write plays. I jog.
Zach, if you could be in a perfect world, in a pre-internet life, if being a playwright had been monetizable,
Sure.
was that what you would do? These are sort of interesting questions
No.
for all of our lives.
No, I think I would do what I'm. I mean, I think actually what I would do what I'm doing. I like freelancing because it's. I wrote a scene for like a industrial video recently that had to have all these strange terms of safety in it, and that was interesting to me, and not interesting at all. I wrote web copy for a thing called Fire Corn, which is hot popcorn. That was interesting. There's a lot of different kinds of things.
Well, and think back. Everyone should go back and watch Mike Lovis's video, his promo video. I mean, someone like Zach had to write that video where the guy works out. I've been watching it recently. I put it up on the website. Oh, by the way, the videos are finally arriving on the website. It's been me that's been delaying that. So we have Mike Lovis, we have the first one with Nick and I, and we have David Familian. So you can go back at the bottom of those pages. Please raise the click count. I'd like people to go back. And the video team has been doing an exceptional job of putting them together. But the hilarious part about Mike's videos, it's intercut with his actual promo film. And the guy works out, and this is a guy who talked about making a wearable technology.
Uh-huh.
And it's like it's too long. Like he works out, then he drops the weights, and then he picks them up again, and he works out some more, and he just keeps working out for 30 seconds extra than maybe he should.
I would much rather talk to a person than be on the thing. So I spend a lot of time talking to people. I'm also, TV writing is, you spend a lot of time going to meetings and talking to people about why you're a good writer, and you hope that you are, and then you write another thing that makes you feel like you did a good thing. That's basically what I do all day. So I go to meetings.
What mistakes do you often see, movie content creators or PR releases people do?
It looks like something else. It looks like something that was already successful, but isn't quite right. What are the mistakes? I mean, punctuation, which I'm not great at, but I notice it too. Mistakes, I see other... I kind of feel like PR and marketing, and this is not fair because there are very smart people who do this, but it always feels like content creation for people who aren't creative. And I don't mean that as... I mean it as like it's downwind of the real thing, always, is how it feels. It feels a little bit like an episode of the show with no soul in it. Or it feels like the easiest thing to be like, well... I mean, again, we put pictures up of handsome boys, and our web traffic would go bananas through the roof.
One
Easiest thing to do.
And maybe as a closing note, because this is pertinent to what's happening next week. So next week, you guys are in charge of the content. This wasn't deliberate, but it turns out to work really well, because next week the students are in groups making 20-minute content periods for the class about kind of like so one group is going to take up what you've talked about and then expand for 20 minutes. So you are content creators, and maybe the one thing that I've observed about the difference between the people that are making content and the people that are marketing content is actually making content is really, really time consuming. And people they put their heart and soul in it. They spend tons of time. You edit it 5 times, you edit it 10 times, you shop it around to your friends, stories get rewritten and rewritten and rewritten, images get kind of edited and edited and edited, paintings take thousands of hours to make. They're incredibly time-consuming processes. Again, not to discredit the marketing teams at all, but their job is actually quite fast.
Yeah.
They have to turn that stuff around really quickly, and they put up like, okay, find a picture of pretty boys, rehash this existing copy into something that sounds okay, and then that's good enough because we got to get it out on the internet. And so the point is just that, and to inspire you for next week, take the time to make your content well edited, craft it well, practice your presentation. It's not very much time you have to fill, and you've got a big group, so you can divide it up, and 5 people can speak for 3 minutes each. But you think of it as content. Don't think of it as marketing. Think of it as something that you need to invest, enough kind of editing time into to make it compelling. Does it grab our attention?
I would challenge you also to think of what else it is besides content. If everything is content, what's the layer below it? What are you making?
See you next week.